Okay, it is Wednesday, September the 9th, 2020, and it's about 8:33 p.m. And my name is Richard Wright, and I'm your professor, as you already know by now. We are at week five, five, which means that this um, course will end next week, actually. And you'll see what I've been talking about. I have completed your your rough drafts, uh, and then I'm going to complete the other the next day or so. But I wanted to get those out early enough for you so you can begin to work for your week five, which is this week that's coming up for your final draft, along with the comments and remarks that I indicated that you needed to do. Many of you did a fairly decent job. Some of you just didn't even bother to follow the discussions or the points that I presented during the last lecture where I talked about preparing a contract. But I do encourage you to make sure that you have a cover sheet, and make sure that you don't have to have citations and references, but I do want citations. I do want cover sheets. Make it, lay it out like a contract. If you've seen many of contracts in this time, in this point in your life, so make sure you take a look at as well. So let's go ahead and get started, so I can share my screen. And here we go. All right, and we come down here, and you will see that for week number 5, you're going to deal with the topic of eminent domain. Eminent domain. And so you're going to summarize the eminent domain example that you discover from your research, what eminent domain is. We'll talk about that a little bit. Discusses whether or not the taking of property was fair, and argues whether or not the government should be able to take a person's property. The paper should be 2 pages minimum. 2 pages minimum. 2 pages minimum. Double space, not single space, with proper APA formatting. So that means your cover page, that means your reference page, and that means citations in the body, Romans 12, and that means also finally that you have a full citations reference page and correct your spelling and grammar. Okay. Then for the final part of your project, you're going to um, um, format it as a form contract and include all the relevant parts, that you were to provide in your draft. Um, Date, signature lines, party, location, with minor errors, required clauses that we've talked about already. All of the prices and quantities are accurate based upon the fact pattern, and then include correct spelling, grammar. Don't worry too much about APA. I'm not really that concerned about that. Okay. And then you will be done with the 2 written assignments. So you see, we're at week 5, and our lecture will be posted here. Alrighty. Let's go over to the course calendar for week 5. Let's go to grade 2s. And you'll see that we're right at the end. This is where we are. Your reading assignment was given, chapter 11, and then you use the flashcards and things for practice. Initial post, why buy it when you can get it free? I've seen some pretty good posts. Your live lecture right now. And then finally, your reply post, Saturday. Then the 13th, you have your 2 written assignments that I just talked about that are due, and your key phrase or word. Okay. Then you see next week is a short week. The 18th is it. We don't go to 19th. We do not go to the 20th. And that's it. So you have your reply post and your written assignment. And then a reminder here, you have your end of quarter. And then of course, you have your key phrase as well, or word. That's the calendar. So you are not confused about when the course ends. I make this crystal clear. I go over it every week anyway. All right. So now let's go back to the course homepage. Let's talk about what's coming up this week. So for week 5 announcement, property, real, personal, and intellectual will be discussed. Chapter 11 of the textbook, and then complete the activities, property of all shapes, sizes, and ideas, common ownership, interest for real property, and finally use the flashcards. Your reply post, your discussion assignment is that was due yesterday. Why buy it when I can get it for free? That was due by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard on the 8th, of course. And then your reply post is due Saturday at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then your written assignment, eminent domain. And then, of course, your final contract due. And again, I caution you, pay close attention to the rubrics for the written assignment, and then listen to some of the things that I tell you in the lecture itself. And then you know about my motto there. So let's go into the module itself. So your written assignment, eminent domain. And you'll discover that eminent domain is basically short put and to the point, the government taking private property um, over the objection of the owner and uses it for the public or a state municipality or a private person or authorized corporation. And what happens is that in order to do so, there is a requirement of just compensation. Normally, this type of thing happens when there's something big going on. I know when some stadiums were built, those kind of things happen, and individuals were taken to court. If they decided not to, the judge would determine whether or not it is um, paid for with um, just compensation. Just compensation. That's the key phrase. And if it is not just compensation, then the judge will not award eminent domain. And one of the other ways is, for example, we recently, well, not recently now, it's been a few years since we had a major um, highway or interstate come through in Illinois up here in the north, and that's called Illinois State 355. For those of you who are familiar with the Chicagoland area, the southwest part, where 355 uh, runs all the way to I-80 on the south and goes all the way up to 290 on the north near Schaumburg in that area. And when they were um, uh, particularly on the south end, just south of I-88. Um, they were taking land, um, and just south of, I should say, 55 or Interstate 55. Um, they were taking land in the Lockport area, in the Lamont area, and heading all the way down to New Lenox. And these are just local areas. And what they were doing was they were um, replacing buildings and things of that nature. Um, I remember when I was a kid and the Dan Ryan, which is 94 in Chicago, I-94 was built, and White Sox Park uh, was there, but they didn't move Sox Park. But what they did was they moved the streets um, over so that the streets were further away from the ballpark, and then built the Dan Ryan Expressway in there. So these are things I remember. But in this paper that you're going to do concerning eminent domain, and don't tell me that there's not a lot of information out there. There is tons and tons of information out there. You can use our library learning resources to find some, and you can find some, but do not use Wikipedia. I repeat. So as I said earlier, this is a 2-page minimum paper. It says 2 to 3, but I say 2-page minimum because that's what it is. And you're going to research and find an example of eminent domain. Now, you don't have to find examples, but an example of, you can find one really good one, and share a summary of what happened in that government taking of the property. Discuss whether you thought that the taking of the property was discuss why you think the taking of the property, your example, was fair, and you have to understand how eminent domain is decided, um, the uh, the benefits of the public or the overall community most time outweigh that individual right. Let's say, for example, if a person has a home that they want to keep forever, they don't want to go nowhere, then it's kind of difficult to find a price to compensate that person because they may have memories and maybe it was their family home. But what will happen in those situations is that they will, that part of it is oftentimes not tearing it down, but moving that. So discuss whether you think the taking of the property from eminent domain in the example that you find is fair, and if not, why? Or, and then also you can add, what alternative would you have? Should the government be able to take your property through eminent domain? And you'll understand eminent domain as you do research, why and why not. And then I already talked about the requirements for APA and so forth. And when I showed you your rubric on the course homepage, and of course you should have a copy of your rubric in itself. So this would be a very interesting topic for you to learn about. Some of you may have personal instances that you're aware of, maybe in your family, how it affected you. Include that kind of stuff. That makes it very interesting as well. I had a few students in the past who had those kind of situations. I believe one of my students was in Minnesota, in the Minneapolis area, and they included um, some writing about eminent domain as well. I have a cousin who lives there, and he's been there all his life, and there's a bunch of them actually. And one of them, they came close to affecting their property, but it was 2 blocks away from their property where they ended up settling on. So he didn't really have to deal with that issue, but he came close to it. So that's your number 1 written assignment. Then your discussion assignment. Um, and dealing with intellectual property and advances in technology, which primarily involves bootleg videos, music, and um, also you have knockoffs of items like Gucci, um, Louis Vuitton, which somebody said that dates you. But that's okay. I don't mind being dated. And also other types of artwork or patents or copyright infringement laws. And how are they? Are they do patent and trademark and copyright infringement laws hurt anyone? I remember when I was coming up as a kid in the big law firm, and I was a file clerk, and I kept the files and maintained the files for the clients. And yeah, yeah, you're right. A lot of people on eBay trying to sell knockoff. Yep, exactly. Yeah, make it seem like it's real, but it's not. You're right, Jeff. That's true. That is true. But what I was going to tell you about trademark issues, I one of the clients we had was McDonald's, and I can tell you, boy, we had numerous files where there were attempts at trademark infringement, uh, taking the name McDonald's, um, and one company tried to take a S off of it. They called it McDonald rather than, and then they didn't have the golden arches. They had a golden arch. They just had one. So they thought that would that would suffice. And of course, you saw the parody. Did you see it Coming to America? Did you see Coming to America? I think most people have. Got to check it out. You check it out. That's with Eddie Murphy and what's his name? Arsenio Hall. Anyway, Eddie Murphy plays various roles in it, and John Amos, who was on Good Times many years ago, and he was in many other movies as well, including Roots. But anyway, he owned a restaurant, and the name of the restaurant in in the movie was McDougal's, and they had instead of the Big Mac, they had the Big Mick, and he had, and it was funny because when Eddie Murphy and I'm kind of giving away the plot, but you see it, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's obviously a comedy and parody, but this happens in the real world where the two guys show up, and John Amos is reading the McDonald's. He's got the manual, the not the little manual. It's a big manual with all their ideas and stuff in it, and he's reading through it, and they walk up on him, and he hides it. Says, "You guys aren't from McDonald's, are you?" You know? But seriously, those are things that really do happen. A real life story. If anybody is familiar with Eastern Illinois University in Charleston, in the southern part of Illinois, one of my kids went there. They had, which by the way, this has nothing to do with trademark, but it actually is the origin of Jimmy John's. Jimmy John started as a project in a entrepreneurial class, and the professor told the students who created it, this will never get off of the ground. Boy, was he wrong. And so the first Jimmy John's, which I think is still down there, you'll see it down the street right off campus. But anyway, what I was going to tell you is on the other side of the expressway, which is I-57, which goes from Chicago all the way down to heading to Missouri, Tennessee, Missouri area down there. So anyway, on the other side or west side, there's a town, I can't think of the name of it, but they had a restaurant called The Burger King. It was called The Burger King. And of course, that conflicted with Burger King. And they had some litigation concerning the copyright infringement or the trademark infringement issue there. And you have to understand that, and as I've represented a lot of entertainers and advise entertainers, and I used to set up copyrights, not patent. I hired different attorneys for patents and copyrights. Just a little story on a patent deal where one of my clients got burned. He got burned big time too. This dentist that I know, he created a disposable toothbrush. And with the disposable toothbrush, the toothpaste was put into the toothbrush and you slide it up and it would come out and you use it to brush your teeth and then you can toss it. Well, he came to me with the idea of a prototype and I said, this is awesome. This would be revolutionary. It'll make you big money. I said, I could see it in hotels and I could see it in many other places. So anyway, I told him, I says, I will set you up with a patent attorney and we will work together and excuse me, and that I will be your primary representative. So I told him, I'll do some research and I checked with the patent and I told him keep it on the down low. So he kept it down low and then he came to my office and I told him, here's a proposal I have from a patent attorney. And see, patent attorneys are held liable just like regular attorneys, except they specialize in that area. Most attorneys I know don't do other laws uh, like bankruptcy or criminal law or any of those other business type things. If you're a patent attorney, you're in a specialized area. So anyway, very pricey. So I told him the price. He says, "Nah, he says, I have some ideas where I can probably save some money." So I cautioned him and then I wrote a letter to him advising him that I recommend that he retain counsel uh, through me or someone of a patent attorney to get his product patented. So he didn't. He found this company that said, if you send your product to us, we will take care of that for not less, a lot less, yeah, a lot less money than hiring a patent attorney. So anyway, because he felt like he was paying for two attorneys, I said, well, you can just pay for that one. And then he said, no, I need you to guide me because I trust you. Well, the point of the matter is he didn't take my advice. So long story short, some months pass and my secretary tells me that the dentist wants to set up an appointment to see me in my office. Well, the dentist's office wasn't that far away from my office. We were in the same building, just down the hall. In fact, he was my dentist. And so he came to the office and sat down and he threw this magazine down in front of me. It was one of those magazines it wasn't Sharper Image, but it was one of those. Have you ever seen, and it's not had nothing to do with my name, but it really is, called Carol Wright. Have you ever seen the Carol Wright magazine? Have you ever seen that? Well, it was a magazine that you can get what we call whatnots, or you can get little gadget type things, and you can order them in bulk and so forth and so on. And he opens it up and he points and he has a circle around it. And I said, "Oh wow, wow! So you got your toothbrush, huh?" He says, "No." He says, and he started, getting upset, not with me, but more upset with himself. And he started saying, "Those so and so's, they took my item." I said, did they, yep, they stole it. I says, "How much did they pay you?" He says, "They paid me $10,000." And I said, "So $10,000, that was what they got for this?" And so anyway, what he was showing me was not really the company that took it. They were the ones who were advertising it for whoever took it, and it was a big deal. He could have been a probably a billionaire, or he could have been very, very rich. Yeah, it was highway robbery, but it was stupidity. It was stupidity, and he didn't utilize the steps that were necessary. And you know, that's one of the things. And so I wanted to share that in tonight's lecture, um, about how important copyright and trademarks, and how the little guy him can be hurt as well. Um, then there are people who think that, well, um, a bootleg video, doesn't hurt anybody. By the way, did you not know, and you may know this by now, that because of the illegal trafficking of knockoffs um, and patent violations, primarily dealing with music and movies and other protected works, like the Gucci bags and so forth and so on, that you pay a price for that, because that's why, well, it's already expensive, but you make more, that they make more money because of the fact that they have to compensate for the losses for it. So it's like this, guys. When you put your time and effort in creating something, you should be able to live off of it. The final thing I'm going to say about this, because I've always enjoyed dealing with this topic, is that intellectual property attorneys um, have proven to me the worth for the person who creates it. Um, there's a subdivision that's not too far from where I'm living right now, and it's a gated community, and a lot of doctors live there, and lawyers and other individuals. So anyway, the point of the matter is that those individuals, um, that I went to do some business with, a couple of doctors, a husband and wife. And they were telling me, I said, "Wow," I said, "this is really nice." She says, "Yeah." She says, "But you know what? My husband and I, we struggle to stay in our position because we have high costs for medical malpractice and other things that we have to pay in order to make money. So we put out a lot of money and do make a lot of money, but we put out quite a bit." He said, "Do you know?" And her husband joined in. He says, "Attorney, do you know who the people are that are really making it?" And I said, "Who?" He says, "Those are individuals who they just go to their mailbox. These are individuals who invented something, and they go to their mailbox and they receive checks in the mail. That's their job." And then they go to the bank, and that's how they live. And all over the world, uh, they find themselves receiving funds for that. But what I'm going to tell you now is that they don't even do that. You know how they get their money now, don't you? It's the letters are DD, and I'm not talking about Dunkin' Donuts. What letters you think I'm talking about? How they get their money instead of coming checks in the mail? No idea? Okay. I work here at Rasmussen. I have never received a check, but I get paid every 15th and the last of the month. Now, do you know? Yep, DD, direct deposit. And so that's how these people, so they don't even have to go to the bank anymore unless they're doing some other special. But anyway, I wanted to share that with you as far as, because I thought this was a very interesting topic. I kind of wish they had turned this into a written assignment as opposed to just a discussion forum. But they're going to be revising some of these courses, and they may change that then. So anyway, so in your discussions, why buy it when you can get it for free? Or basically what you're really saying is you can just steal, because really it's theft. It really is theft. You do know that it is illegal to be in possession of bootleg movies and stuff. Have you I can't resist saying this. Have you been to the movies before? That was before the pandemic, and you have these people sitting in a row. If you go into the theater now and you see them, they sit near the front row and they have their cell phones out. Have you seen that before? Yeah, pirating the movie. And what they're doing is that they're actually taking the movie, and there's several of them, and they send them back and download them, and then they edit them, and they have the movie out, and people can buy them. Well, that is illegal. You can go to jail and or be fined a lot. It's a federal offense, not a state offense. So, yeah, but you see it all the time. Never fails. All right, the course project. This is the final document. I already submitted to each of you your drafts. By now, you know how well you did. You know what you need to do. I didn't understand that. All right, I'm not talking to you. I want you to just be quiet there. If you have Alexa in the room, you'll hear from her. But this is not Alexa. That's the other alternative. You familiar with Bixby? Yeah, that's what that is. And I'm not asking Bixby to do anything, but Bixby wants to know, do I need anything? It's like my personal butler. But anyway, the point I'm making is that I shared with you guys what you needed to do. Now, one of the things that I wanted you to do with your draft that some did was make it look like a contract. I mean, I know there would be some things that you need to do because week 5 tells you how to clean it up. But the point of the matter is that you're at a point now where if you didn't do so well with the first one, you can't go back and do it, but you have more work to do in the final draft. I have some people who had some rough drafts that were like finals. But I suggested to those people that you did a great job, you got a perfect score, but make sure that you clean it up when you do the next one. One of the things that really got to be careful, I'm going to be looking very carefully at, did you provide all of the requirements of the contract? Many people miss force majeure, and as much as I talked about that in the lecture before the draft, and also act of God. So you want to make sure you have those kinds of things. You want to make sure that you focus on the language that's necessary to describe the items themselves specifically so that there's no confusion. Make sure that price is very clear. You were given that in week 2 to work with when you prepared that little chart. So you want to yeah, and the type of payment. Yeah. So you got all those different things. Think about those different things. Is it cash, or is it, and most people don't deal in cash anymore, but a check, they'll usually deal with it in a check, or some deal with electronic. Depends upon the kind of company it is. So, with what you're dealing with Mr. Barker, and this is really a smaller scale. So you've set up what you wanted to do, and now it's time to put it in the final document. Remember what I said, the Four Corners Doctrine at the beginning of this course. If it's not on the paper, it doesn't exist. Remember, your negotiations don't count a hill of beans when it comes to dealing with the issues of the contract. The document should speak for itself. And, we went through all the business of a meeting of the minds. We went through all of the business of why it should be a written contract. By the way, you don't have to put that in there. That's your knowledge that you already know that this has to be a written contract for two reasons. Number one, you can't do the assignment unless you do a written assignment, a written contract. You sit up all night and try to figure out how to get around that, and you just be staying awake for nothing. But anyway, the point of the matter is that I'm going to ask, do you know why this contract has to be in writing based on what you learned in this course? Do you know? It should jump right out at you. My legs. Yes, yes. Yeah, because what's the price? We gave you a price. Everybody should have that price. 710. Yeah. Don't have a. I saw one paper somebody wrote. The price will be around $700. I mean, I feel like painting that with a big paintbrush. Like, no, you didn't. That's that. It's not around $701. It's not $700. It's 701, and that's the price that they not 701, but did I say 701? I said 701. Yeah, but the price that was actually 710. So you want to make sure you do that, because you can go back and look at your stuff that you should have. So if you have 701, then you're going to lose some points. If you have 700, you're going to lose points. So it needs to be 710, because that's the price that we want you to work with here. And so now you've taken my comments that I've given to you, and that you're going to incorporate that into your final draft. Okay, and um, be sure to check all the elements and proofread your final document for grammar and mechanics. I suggested to many of you who didn't do it that you have captions like parties or price, and take a look at some contracts. Go on and Google and look at some contracts so that you can see how they're set up and all of that stuff. Some of the language that's in those contracts, though, don't try to incorporate them. Don't try to get, as one student did one time, and they got a big zero because it turned out that their contract was copied from a completed contract that they got off of one of those legal contract, do-it-yourself legal contract deals. And when I ran it through Grammarly, it popped up, and so excuse me, the student said, "Well, professor, this is what I came up with." I said, "Yeah, because you took it from what someone else did already." I says, "You didn't read the." By the way, um, backing up on this, uh, taking those copy things, plagiarism and stuff that we're trying to stop you from doing. kind of deals with the topic that we just got through discussing about, trademark copy, where someone taking the time and effort and putting their sweat, tears into creating something, and you just take it and use it and put your name on it. Yeah, so that kind of should give you a little perspective on why we deal with plagiarism. Um, you want to be certain that you've covered all the requirements so that you can collect your money, or maybe uh, just to get an A on the project. Okay, I like what the I know one of the people who did this, and I kind of know who probably suggested that parentheses thing, um, just to get an A. But the point of the matter is that the requirements that are in a contract are to protect you. And I had one student to prepare me a document, and they said they used the words promisor and promisee, and I said no, that's promissory note language, and that's not the same as a contract. It kind of does the same thing, but not as a standard contract. Okay. For example, you do know that if you own a home, that you have a mortgage, right? And that mortgage is for valuable consideration, whatever the amount is that they loaned you to purchase the property. Well, that mortgage is secured by another document called a mortgage note, which that's your promise to pay deal in there. So all the terms that are mentioned in the mortgage lay out what is expected that both parties are due to perform adequately. But of course, the note is the document that is securing the, just like a promissory note secures a debt generally. So that kind of thing. So anyway, that's it for the final contract. Again, um, we're not trying to turn you into lawyers, but I can tell you this, that students who are paralegals, they know how to do them real well now. I know paralegals, I'm talking about people who actually have graduated and got their degree as a paralegal. Um, they were writing contracts before for the lawyers, and the lawyers will proof them and make sure that things are in place there. So consider yourself as operating like a paralegal when you're preparing this, and that this is going to be a real life document. And whatever you do not put, if you put force majeure and you put the act of God uh, after the signature, don't do that. That's not where you find it. It's one of the clauses in there, and it's good if you want to. Paragraph 1, you can do that. You can make it number 1, number 2, no, put them in number, but make sure. And oh, by the way, I should tell you this. I do not mind if you do your contract single space. So it's okay because most contracts are single space. So I just wanted to make sure if you do a double space, I'm not going to penalize you, but it will look more like a professional contract. I haven't seen too many contracts double space. Most contracts I've seen are single space. Okay, any questions about the final project? Okay, it is due Sunday. Okay, if you get it in after that, you're going to lose points for late submission unless there's some extenuating circumstances that I am aware of. Yeah, yep, yeah, that's earlier in the lecture I covered that, but yes, in the calendar, as I always go over, yes, that the 18th to be exact is it for us, and we will part company, and you guys probably won't see me much because they only have me in business to teach business law. Now I used to teach a course called business ethics. I don't know if they even still have that as part of your curriculum, for getting your business degree. I don't know why they shouldn't, but it was a very interesting course. I enjoyed teaching that. But yeah, I usually last time I taught this course was 2018, and so they usually will borrow me from the School of Justice Studies, which is where, if you decide to come over there, that's where you'll run into me again. Okay. Some students say, "Oh, good, good, good. I know how to stay away from you." Yeah, right. Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate the support. No, but you know, I try to be helpful. One of my students told me that my legs thing is definitely a game changer. Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Jeff. That my legs thing, because I said, well, of course it was a game changer. I took the bar in 1978. Okay, I'm still talking about it 2020. I was 28 years old when I took it, and I'm 70 now, and I'm teaching it, and I still can rattle it off. I can still look at and see why. If somebody asks me off the top of my head, why is this have to be in writing? And then I can go down the MYLEGS and do it. So it's a good thing. All right. And then your live classroom lecture there. Okay, so that's it for assignments. I have successfully, while talking about this, actually pretty much covered the lesson content material because um, except we deal with loss and abandoned property, uh, multiple ownerships, intellectual property. We've talked about that, the importance of intellectual property, but we'll just simply just settle in and talk about properties of all shapes, sizes, and ideas. You should know property is tangible, where you can hold it in your hand, or it's intangible, you know. And so we consider personal property. Now, when we deal with real estate, it's called real property. Personal property is something that you can put in your hand, or something as small as a pen, or either a car or something like that. A building is never described as personal property. Even though it's personal property, it's real property, which is short for real estate. And there are different rules and regulations and laws that are involved with this. That so then, what is a third-party beneficiary? A third-party beneficiary is someone that is not a part of the contract, but it benefits that person. Such as you're familiar with a trust, where the trust is set up for the benefit of the beneficiaries. The beneficiaries are a party to it, but they're not a party to setting it up. Here's some examples of third-party beneficiaries, though, that are aside from trust, where after the dream wedding, Laura's parents offered to buy her um, and her husband a new home. Laura's parents put in a bid on the house of Laura's choosing, and the seller accepts it. If for some reason the contract fails, then Laura has the ability to sue because she is the intended beneficiary, even though it was a gift. However, this would have to be in writing, of course. You know that because of the L in the statute of frauds. And so, um, if they offer to buy her house and they don't buy the house, then she can possibly sue them for relying on it. However, she couldn't sue for that particular house. That's what I'm saying without it being in writing. So, um, so the key thing is that she could sue, but if it's not in writing, she's going to have a short stick there. What if the third party is incidental? For example, John's boss offers to raise him a raise, and he says, good. John is planning to install a new pool in the backyard. Well, we would use what we call in the law business as a reliance argument. He's relying upon the raise that his boss told him he was going to give him, that he will find himself expending additional monies to build this new pool. But if the boss can't afford to offer him a raise, John's daughter, upset by the fact that they won't be getting a pool, wants to sue her dad's boss. Well, John's daughter is an incidental party, and she doesn't have a right to sue the boss directly. John might have some issues there in terms of being able to do that, but she cannot, all right. And then real property, we've already talked about that enough, and we already know about the statute of frauds. The inheritance of real property, a document for a will, and where a person distributes property, and there are two ways to distribute it, without in a system of courts where a will has to be filed and probated, and then the person who has to carry out the terms of the will then carry out those terms based upon them being named as what we call the executor. What's the difference in an executor and executrix? Do you know? One's a male, one's a female. That's all. We don't. It's becoming gender neutral, but you might run across that in some old documents. But anyway, the point of the matter is, and then if a person dies, so that will is then filed, and then it's probated and carried out. Very expensive thing. If you don't have a will, there's what we call intestate succession, and it talks about here means that the state has laws of succession under the statute relating to how the property is divided with the relatives. And then if there are no relatives, then it says the property escheats to the state. That's a legal term that we discussed in property when I was in law school. What it means is it then goes to the state, and the state becomes the owner of the property. Adverse possession. We had we had this in our on the bar, and basically we used to say that overall, even though various states, that your possession of the property must, and we came up with this mnemonic. Actually, I did. Must cone for 20 years. Now, and you'll see why I said that, because if you see at the bottom point, the statutory limit must be met in the jurisdiction, but it could be anywhere from 5 to 25 years. So we just came up with using 20 in our exam. That's what it was in Illinois at that time. So that your activity on that property must be continuous. It must be open so people can actually see it. Notorious, which meant that you just went there. You got what they call squatters' rights, and then exclusive for 20 years. And so what happened is that people would be on the property and nobody would do anything. You get the property and you don't have to pay anything. I know someone who moved into a vacant house, and this actually happened about 20 something years ago, and they ended up uh, staying in that house. They ended up fixing it up and everything, and they were in there, didn't have a mortgage or none of that. They stayed in there for a long time, over 20 years, and then they applied for a deed, and they were able to get it under the adverse possession. But the doctrine of adverse possession encourages people to actually use their land and not allow it to sit vacant for long periods of time, because otherwise somebody's going to claim the land and they're going to take over. And these are just some points here. Notice what I just said, the cone. The possessor must be an actual possession. Open and notorious, so it's visible to others. Hostile, it's against the owner's interest. In other words, you didn't go through, pay them anything for it. Continuous for the statutory length of time, and you can't move on and off the land, and must be exclusively done by the squatter, and then the time varies. That's what we call adverse possession. Intellectual property, we talked about that, so we're not going to talk anymore about that. And so that's it. That's pretty much it for this topic. And I do encourage you, excuse me, to use these flashcards because they help you to know about, even though there's no no test that you have right now. So eminent domain, you can flip that over, and then remember I said you can check the little box and then flip it over, and it tells you.
Just compensation 3. Historically taken for use of utilities.
And you know, it's interesting, it says taken for use of utilities. Well, yeah, but it can be taken for buildings, big buildings, government buildings, um, places like the United Center in Chicago was once the Chicago Stadium. There was some land that was vacant, and the people weren't really using it. And in order, they couldn't just take the land and build the stadium on it. They had to pay the people for the amount of that land to build it on it to get clear title. So put that under no.
Lost property.
Lost property. So
Finder keepers 2.
yeah.
Finder must return to owner 3. Mislaid. Finder must care for property.
So we discussed this in law school about finders keeper, where people abandon something. Well, the finder must return lost property to an owner in order to get clear title. Where property is mislaid, the finder cares for the property for the rightful owner, and those kind of things. You can create a situation called a bailment. A bailment is
personal property to another with agreement to return it 1. Sole benefit of giver 2. Sole benefit of receiver 3. Mutual benefit.
And bailments are often created by renting something. Now, you have now rents with option, but until you fulfill the terms of that rental, then you might taking a car, for example, is usually car rental falls within that. Fee simple. One of the terms in personal property that we learned, and it just simply means you own the whole thing.
Entire bundle of rights.
That's all it means. It means you own the whole thing. Life estate, it means what it says. It means what it says for your life.
Rights to use and possess for lifetime.
Yes. And so forth. You can go on and you can study each of these. Then you come down here and you learn about some of the things that I just got through talking about. Fee simple, about real property. This applies to real estate, real property. If you see it's in fee simple, that means that you're the sole owner. However, it could be subject to zoning issues, easements that have been established. Fee simple, defeasible, a form of ownership on the condition that if you don't satisfy it, you can forfeit the land. For example, you donate your land to the city as long as it's used for a specific purpose, like the playground. And if at any time it ceases to be, then it reverts back to you. Life estate means that the possessor is able to be on the property for their life. Somebody grants their sister the right to be on property, and when they pass away, then it returns. My grandmother, when she actually passed away, she had a guy who wasn't her boyfriend in Mississippi. She said, she used to tell me, he's not a boyfriend, he just lives with me, he's a good friend. Anyway, he helped her. So she had paid, you know, the property. She didn't owe anything. He just had to keep the taxes maintained. So he was allowed to stay, and I was the one who was the one who was executor of her will and estate. And so I allowed him to stay on the property rent free, and he just had to pay the taxes and maintain the insurance. That was it. And when he died, then it reverted back to the estate, which I was the one who got the benefits of that. Tenants in common. This is when you own property, and if one of the parties die, then that interest passes to their heirs or to someone other than that. Joint tenancy is if a person dies, then the survivor becomes the 100% owner. So I, when we bought our house in November of last year, my name was the only name that they allowed to put on it, the property. And so that was the lender's issue. And so title was recorded in my name. But I also have children, and 4 from my wife and 4 from before. If I died without clearing that up or without a will, she would have to battle with those kids because they would become owners of that property halfway. But what I did was I did what we call a quit claim deed, which makes her a joint owner. And there's what we call joint tenancy, and she has survivorship rights. So if I pass away, then I become the sole owner of that property. Of course, she still has to pay for it, unless the insurance that I have will take care of most of it, which pretty much what I try to do. Tenancy in the entirety, a type of joint tenancy where that can only occur between a husband and wife. You cannot use this, and that's actually how our property is set up in Tennessee in the entirety. And one of the neat parts about Tennessee in the entirety is this. Let's say, for example, somebody sues me and I have a business and they get a judgment against me. They cannot put that judgment on the property because of the tenancy in the entirety, because that law protects my wife's rights in the property and would not allow them to get a lien on it. It would have to involve both of us that would in order to do that. So that's just a little something for you in terms of information. So that's all that I have for today. And so I want to end tonight by giving you a key phrase. And the key phrase that sits with me and resonates with me is, what you want to take a guess at it? Let's see. How about eminent domain? That's it. So you give me that and you get your points. Okay, well, again, I hope that I have provided some details other than what's in the module itself, given some clarity to it so that you can understand and, as I say, put some meat on these bones and help you to understand and be able to apply. I thought that this was a very interesting topic this week that we had to deal with, eminent domain. And then dealing with, of course, the patents, copyrights, and trademarks, those kinds of things very much. By the way, do you know, how do you know that something is trademarked or copywritten? How do you know if you pick up uh, something and look at it and see that it is? Well, the answer very simply is this. You'll see the little letter R. Yeah, uh, it'll say no. There's a like for example, if you were, for example, to look at the word Coca-Cola, you might see, let's see, you might see a little R next to it. McDonald's, we had TM. Uh, you've seen that, the little letters at the end, they're a little small at the bottom. Looks like a footnote kind of thing. Well, that tells you that it's a C with a circle is copywritten. And so that's that's how you know that it is done. Now there's actually documents that are filed that back that up. My artists that used to do music, I would take their songs and I would get them a copyright. And there was what they call a poor man's copyright. When some people tried to use it, what they would do is they would take the lyrics, write it, put it in an envelope, and send it to themselves, certified mail, and then keep it closed. Well, that didn't work very well. You hear of legal battles with songs, and then also dealing with music and stuff. They have what they call a fair use, where you can use a portion of it. And by the way, if you don't properly do what you need to do to renew these things, then you can lose. Did you not know that Xerox messed up big time? Because what they did was they allowed their name uh, to become a common name. So that when in my day and time, anything that you put on a copy machine was called a Xerox copy, even if it was a Minolta or another company. It's a little different in your times now, but you can allow your uh, name, if you don't protect it and renew it for so many years. It's been a year since I've done it, so I don't know what the number of years that you have to do it in, But anyway, you got to have yourself a good attorney that deals with patents, trademarks, and copyrights as well. So, all right. So, good night. I will see you next week for the final lecture. Again, remember the things that I've talked about tonight in this lecture concerning your final document that's due this week. And that's it. So stay safe, and you're welcome. And I'll see you then. Good night.